We are live. All right, everyone. This is our second month going live, right? Yeah? Cool. Today we're going to do a discussion on how to fix injuries. This will be a combination of a couple things. It will be discussion on recovery, what we do before, after the workouts. But I really want to give you guys an understanding of what is going on in the body. What's that? You not see me? There we go. Maybe scoot that back a little bit. For everyone on Facebook, there's about 10 or 12 people. Are you still? Is that box still in the frame? Yeah.
There we go.
You got it? Cool. All right. So we're going to talk about what's going on with the body, when we're in pain, what should we be doing. I want you guys to have an understanding. This is like Torian's answers to questions. I'm gonna move it 0.1 centimeters to the right, and then I'm gonna shake it. So, you guys that don't know, we'd like to have fun here. So, we're gonna start out with talking about pain. So, when our body's in pain, how do we fix these problems? And we do a lot of mobility post-workout here to keep you guys out of pain, but we're gonna talk about what's happening and how to manage that. So, the first thing we look at is motor control. What are the shapes that we're creating? I think was I talking to you about this yesterday? Yeah. So basically, are we creating the right shapes for our body? A couple examples would be like, hey, my neck hurts. Well, do you sit at a computer all day and are you hunched over and you type in and our head's out and it's creating all this tension on the neck? Try to sit up. Put your body into its proper shape. The other thing is, like, if I'm rounding forward and I go to raise my arm over my head and I'm running into structures, that kind of stuff. Creating the right shapes usually leads to getting out of pain. And how many times have you guys been doing something, you're like, hey, I got shoulder pain, I got elbow pain, I got knee pain, and I say, just slow it down, and the pain goes away. It's because we're creating the right shapes and we're not putting our body under too much stress to stay out of the pain. Next up, we're going to talk about connective tissue. So connective tissue is also called sliding surfaces. There's a couple different tissues in your body. Your muscle tissues are connective tissue. Your tendons, your ligaments are connective tissue. And your skin is connective tissue. All these are sliding surfaces that are supposed to be able to glide. And a couple things with this. When we have, you'll hear me say, like, gunked up tissue. Think about string cheese, right? String cheese is supposed to easily pull apart. Now, what if I took string cheese and I wrapped it in saran wrap and then I smashed it at 100 degrees for a couple hours? What's going to happen to it? It's going to stick. It's going to have a really hard time being pulled apart, right? That's what happens to your tissues when you're sitting or right after you work out and you got all that lactic buildup and it's pushing all the tissues together. That's what's going on in the body. So those tissues need to be able to freely glide again. That's where foam rolling comes into place. So when we foam roll, we're not just laying on a foam roller or a lacrosse ball. You're rolling back and forth. You're going side to side. What you're trying to do is those muscle tissues are intertwined with each other. You're trying to get them to freely move again. And so that's why we shear the tissues. Now, a couple other things when it comes to that connective tissue and its health. Am I out of the frame again? No? Good. Are our tissues properly hydrated and are they getting enough nutrients? And so when it comes to your white connective tissue, your tendons and your ligaments, does anyone know the difference between the two? Ligaments attach bone to bone. Tendons attach muscle to bone. They're both white tissues. They're both connective tissues, but they have different purposes. Hydration. Are we getting enough water? And a couple things with that. You guys probably always see I'm drinking this cloudy thing of water, usually during the workouts. I drink one of these once or twice a day. Usually I drink one at the 6 a.m. to get myself properly hydrated for the day, and then I drink one whenever I work out to give myself the minerals that I'm losing as I work out. But proper hydration is really important. The other thing, and I know I sound like a broken record with this, collagen. I absolutely swear by collagen. So collagen is a protein that helps with connective tissue. So your white tissues, your tendons, your ligaments. It also helps with hair, skin, and nails, ladies. But I take this every day. I never skip a day. I have a lot of injuries from jiu-jitsu, and I live pain-free now, and it's part of CrossFit, part of the collagen. I don't think it will give you your hair back, Greg. I'm sorry.
I'm trying.
Yeah. And so I always like to give examples. You all have been here for a while, and so you've seen how we help people. But P. Riley had a hip injury last week. It wasn't really an injury. It was just overuse with not enough recovery. And so she came in Friday for a PT session. I said, what are you getting? I'm getting some radiating pain going down the leg. Okay, sciatic nerve. Let's fix that. And we did a couple tests, and we found that her lower hamstring was tight and her erector muscle in about mid-back was tight. Oh, there they are. We'll wait for them.
She's on the Facebook Live.
Oh, what's up, everyone? Hey, I'm just telling your story from yesterday. My bad. My bad. I jumped the gun. We have the Rileys coming in. Now, we're on Facebook. So, anyways, P. Riley came in yesterday, told me she had some hip pain, and we did some testing, retesting, and pain-free now, right? And really, it was less than before. Yeah, it does take a couple days of work, but there's reasons behind all this stuff and why we did the test and the retest. So going from your connective tissue, so when we're trying to fix problems, 1, is it the shape that we're creating? Yes or no? 2, is it the connective tissue? Is it the sliding surfaces, that foam rolling? Yes or no? From there, we look at joints. And so I'm going to use your shoulder as an example. Hold on. I'm going to grab the skeleton.
You know why skeletons are so depressed, Devin?
Why is that?
Because they have no body.
Oh, look at James. Oh,
That is a joke that Deborah's going to tell
she can't wait.
the next 2 weeks, yes.
We're going to use the shoulder as an example. So when we're looking at the joint and we have an impingement, it's really bone is smashing into bone. It's causing inflammation in those tissues. So when we look at our shoulder, you have your scapula. Now, if you don't know what your scapula looks like, it's really fascinating. It looks like a little Star Trek fighter jet. But it comes up, it creates these 2 roofs that come out over top of your humerus. And what happens is, so you have this nice rounded area on the inside where your humerus sits. When you raise your arm overhead, it's not just that the arm is moving in one plane. It actually rolls, slides down, and glides up. And so there's like a 3D motion that's going on in there. Now what happens if we have a shoulder impingement, and say your supraspinatus is coming down through here, and you go to raise your arm overhead and you jam that bone into the shoulder blade, that's causing that inflammation, that pain over many reps. And so what we're trying to do, we got to get that shoulder to sit in its proper place. We use joint distractions. That's the banded stuff that we do. So a lot of times we do the banded overhead stretches. That's one of my favorites. If anybody was in the 6 a.m. this week, Jason he wrecked his dirt bike over the weekend, texted me and said, hey, I don't know if I can make the class this week. I stubbed my shoulder pretty bad. I said, don't worry about it. Come into class. Let me check it out. He came in Monday. We did a couple tests. Couldn't raise his arm past here. He was having shoulder impingement where when he wrecked, he jammed the shoulder into the joint capsule, which your joint capsule, so you have your humerus. Your joint capsule is this sac of connective tissue that sits around it and helps hydrate the joint. And so he had jammed it up into the joint capsule. And so what we did with him, his is a little bit different. We took a band, wrapped it around the wrist, and then we step on it. And then we just stand up and let it pull to the end of the joint capsule. It's relieving that pressure that he has built up, and it's setting the joint into its proper location. Now, there's a couple different ways we can do this. If you've done PT with me before and I really break down the recovery piece, so Scott, you were having some hip impingement, right? Same thing that we just talked about here, but his hip was jamming up into the socket. We did a bunch of testing and retesting, and we found which stretch worked for you the best. Was it the Samson stretch? Because we did Samson, we did pigeon, and we did hamstring.
Yeah, the pigeon worked really well, but the other two worked even better.
The other two worked even better.
The Samson one.
So what we did with Scott was he was having some hip impingement. He was having some pinching when he squatted. And so we took a band, we tied it off to the rig. We pull it up to the back of the hip. It pulls that hip to the end of the joint capsule. And we also get a good stretch in there. Boom, his joint can now properly move. He's no longer having that pinching feeling that you get. He's out of pain. And so that is joint distractions. Now the other thing with the joint is, and I use the shoulder quite a bit because if you look at the shoulder, it's like a golf ball sitting on a tee. And if it's out of line at all, you can get that pinching in there. There's a lot of muscles that come up to create that rotator cuff. And so just understanding the proper shape that we're supposed to create, being here and trying to raise your arm overhead versus being in the proper position and raising your arm overhead. Everyone who's here, let's try that now. Push your shoulders forward like you got bad posture. Now try to raise your arm overhead. How far can you get? Yeah, it doesn't feel good, right? Bring it back down, sit up properly, pull your shoulder blades back and down. Now raise it overhead. More range of motion, right? It's because that roof of the shoulder blade was able to freely rotate properly and let you get into that proper shape. Now, the last thing that we actually look at is muscle length. So how flexible is that muscle tissue? It's usually not the cause of the problem. You'll get people who come in and they'll be like, hey, I can't touch my toes. Well, let me look. Do you have a bunch of knots built up? Do we need to foam roll more? You know, is your hip jammed up into the joint? We need to look at that stuff first. But if it is muscle length, it's usually not, but if it is muscle length, there are a couple things that work. One is PNF stretching. That is the 3-second hold, 3-second relax. You guys see it. I think I had both of you do this, but band in the hip, and we did like the elephant walk where we're locking out the knee and then relaxing. Same idea. We're just trying to increase it slightly over time. The body's really fascinating. Your body will adapt for what you need. So if you're sitting at a desk all day and you're rounded, your body's going to say, hey, that's what we need right now. That's the shape I'm going to create. I'm going to keep you where you want to be. If you're exposing it to stress, like exercise, it will adapt to meet those needs for your workouts. And so proper posture, recovery stuff, all that. Now, you can combine some of these. Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned PNF stretching. What does PNF stand for?
I cannot say it, but it's proprioceptive. Neuroceptive. What's the last word, Matt? Come on, you're the exercise expert. It's a really big word that we don't need to know as far as the members, but it does stand for something, yeah. But basically, it's contract, relax, and you'll hear me do that with the balls too. I'll get back to you with that, because. But what I was saying is you can combine the two. So yesterday, I believe, I did it with you, where we did some banded distraction with some foam rolling at the same time. And that's a good way to, one, put the tissues at their end, and then we mobilize and break them up and get them to shear. So we've elongated them, and then we get in there and we break them up, we get them to shear, and then they're able to freely glide again. That's my personal favorite way to do it, and it depends on the type of injury, the piece of the body. So you guys have probably seen me before. I take that really gnarly blue roller over there, and I'll put it under my hamstring, and then I'll hold on to the upright and I'll stretch myself forward. One, I'm putting my hamstring at its end, and then I'm trying to break up those tissues to get them to freely glide again. So, plan of action and how to fix it. First off, we can test and retest this stuff, okay? A lot of times, especially you guys who have done PT with me, I will have you do the movement first. We do the recovery piece, and then we retest it. Did it get better? Yes or no? So like, how long was your PT session when we were trying to fix your hip? 45 minutes? I know, but did we just focus on the hip for an hour? That's what I mean. Like I think with Patricia yesterday it was 40 minutes, right? We worked on the hip. And so, but we test and we retest. We find what is causing the pain. Okay, cool. Let's mobilize it. Let's retest. Did that work? Hey ladies, you got to quit talking while I'm on the video, okay? No more talking. So after we test, we retest, we ask ourselves, is it better, same, or worse? If it got better, cool. Let's add that to our toolbox, okay? Let's do it every day for a couple weeks. Let's try to get out of that pain cave. If it's the same, maybe we need to find something else that's going to work better. If it's worse, no, we're not doing that, okay? How often should we be mobilizing? 5 to 10 minutes a day. Now what's cool is when you guys show up to class, every single class that we offer here at CrossFit Control, you do a recovery piece at the end. Every single class. We prioritize recovery over the finishers. We've had this discussion with the coaching staff. So if our timelines are running over, we're going to cut a round out on the finisher before we cut out your recovery piece. The recovery is so important so you can move throughout life. Even, Matt, you do recovery pieces in Barbell Club, right?
Yeah.
So every single class we offer, we do recovery. Even when I do PT, you guys always get 5 to 10 minutes at the end. So, and it doesn't matter if you do 3 classes a day, you're still going to get a recovery piece at the end. So last little piece I'm going to talk about is my prescription, how I address pain. And it's not a secret. I just want you guys to understand what's going on in the body. But when I have an injury or pain, my first thing I do is I need to warm up the area. And so I like blood flow stuff. High to medium volume, and we do a lot of band stuff. So if I have a shoulder injury, I'm going to take a light band. I'm just trying to get blood into the joint, so I might do some light band. I'll do some pull-aparts, right? Until I get that little bit of burn. It's not causing any pain in the joint. Cool, now I know my joint is hydrated. It's got blood around it. It's going to clean up that scar tissue. Now that the joint is warmed up, I can get into the mobility pieces with the band too. So you guys, if you've ever worked with me, we did the hip circle yesterday for Patricia before she got into the mobility pieces. And there are different movements you can do to warm up the joints in different ways. One thing we did was we did bridges pushing away and bridges pulling forward. Pushing away hits the quads, pulling hits the hamstrings. I'm trying to find what is the problem area whenever we do those things. The ones for the shoulders is the crossover symmetry, which you swear by it, don't you, Deborah?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Deborah does it every day now. So we get blood into the area. Now we can look at mobilizing. The first thing I want to do, I got blood into the area, I want to clean up the tissues. I want to make sure that they can move again. That's where foam rolling, using the lacrosse ball, I use different tools depending on your level of comfort. So if you're brand new to foam rolling, we have this really soft foam roller. That's a good place to start. How many of you, the first time you did it, you're like, my quads can't take it, right? Yeah, but over time, we move from the really soft foam roller, there's more dense ones, the blue ones over there, and then we get into, these are the ones that I use, these rumble rollers. They have little teeth that help shear those tissues and get them to move better. And so if you're new to it, start out with the soft one, and then we can get into this. We can also use lacrosse balls. The lacrosse ball, smooth, it's a good place to start, and then we can get into these ones where I prefer these ones. They have little teeth, again, help with shearing the tissues, and they're smaller, so more pressure per square inch. We also have, if you've ever seen a little peanut before, this is designed to sit on either side of your spine. And so like your erector muscles or your rhomboids, your traps, that kind of stuff, helps clean up those. So that's where I go to next. I got blood flow to the joint. I get the tissues cleaned up with the foam rolling, and I usually try to hit a couple different spots. Once I get there, then I get into joint distractions and stretching. And so that's where you'll see me either do the banded pigeons. I always try to add a band whenever we're doing the stretching. What were the stretches we did yesterday? I know we did the elephant walk where we pulled the band up to the hip. What was the other one?
With the band on the rig around my hip.
That was the elephant walk. And then did we do 3 or 2? The other one we did was we hung it from the bar, and I had you do the deep lat stretch. And so, and when I have you guys, do these stretches, I'm trying to pinpoint certain areas. So you might do the same stretch, but I'm going to mix it up and have you do it a different way. Like we did, I remember had you do the deep back step, and it hit the lower piece of the lat. All that stuff plays into it. The last little piece I'll give you, and this is something I think it was eye-opening for you whenever we first started talking about it, is when you have pain in a joint, it's not usually caused by the root area, okay? So if I have knee pain, it's probably not in my knee. And so you guys, this is totally free knowledge. You don't have to go pay a physical therapist $150 an hour to get this. It's caused by upstream or downstream from the joint. So if my knee is bothering me, how many times you guys come to me with a joint pain and I say, okay, front or back of the knee? I want to know, is it the hamstring or the quad? Because it's not the knee that's bothering you, it's the quads are tight, or the hamstrings are tight, or maybe your calves are tight. Same thing with shoulder pain, usually caused by bicep, tight trap, or tight tricep, could be caused by tight traps. Telling me where you're getting pain helps me pinpoint the problem area. Sometimes I'm wrong, but usually we get it within 1 to 2 tries, right? I mean, really, Greg, how many times have you come to me with an injury and we haven't been able to fix it within 20 minutes?
Never.
No. And same, Scott, you came to me.
I had a knee issue too, just like Greg, and we fixed it in a matter of minutes. My hips.
Yep. B. Riley? Yep. Now, I'm not saying that you do this stretch for 5 minutes and you're pain-free. No, we have to continue to work on it daily, which is why we do the 5 to 10 minutes at the end of class. That's your good daily maintenance. Injuries are going to happen. This is why we're doing this talk, so you guys can understand what's going on with your body, how to prevent it, and how to fix it. So, do you guys have any questions?
No, but I was just going to say, a year ago, when I had the bone spurs in my shoulder and couldn't move my arm over my head, and had an MRI, I went to a neurologist. He told me to stop doing everything for a whole month. And I just came home and started crying. I told Greg, I said, I can't do that. I can't just not do anything. And to me, that made no sense because you're not getting blood flow to anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it would just make it worse. And then I came here and I told you that. And then we just started doing lower weights and modifying everything. And then now I'm back to better than I was, actually.
Yeah, so you guys can't see Deborah she's off camera. She's telling her story. So, Deborah,
No.
are you going to?
I'm sorry.
So, a year ago, Deborah was having some pain in her neck, and it was causing numbness down the arms, right?
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
had bone spurs.
So she had bone spurs, and a bone spur without surgery we can't really fix. So when she came to me, I said, okay, we have to restructure how you're moving. And so the common problems were your shoulders were sitting forward, and her traps were really tight from all those bone spurs digging into them. So we started out with really low weight. You went from, crushing it to those bone spurs happened. Couldn't do a push-up, couldn't do a pull-up, couldn't press overhead anymore. And it took some time to rebuild that. But we started out really low weight, high volume, getting blood into the area. We did a ton of rolling with those smaller balls with the teeth, getting the traps to move again, and even into your rhomboids. And then just this past week, Deborah's doing handstands again. Deborah's getting kipping pull-ups, which It's crazy because Deborah's super strong and can do strict pull-ups, but she's doing these things that the body wasn't allowing her to do because she was getting pain. But with constant time and working on it, she's able to move again. So thanks for sharing that. Yes, Greg.
As novice athletes, as I feel like most of us are, when do we know when to smash the muscle, stretch the muscle, different things, scrape the muscle?
Scrape the muscle.
Well, all of those. I mean, how do we know when it's time to, I need a band to stretch it over, I need the foam roller to smash it?
That's a good question. So that's where the test and retest comes into play. Usually I can get it right on the first try, but
You can, yeah. I'm talking about us. If we're at home, how can we go about that?
so
Just message Devin like we did.
yeah, that's what ends up happening is people just they message me and say, what do I do? Because there's sometimes where I don't tell you to stretch or foam roll, I tell you to do bridges, right? And so it comes down to what is the issue you're having. So like for her, it was lower back. She didn't have any trauma to the area. I knew her SI joint was just probably out, so we had to get blood flow, and then we did the resetting the hips. When it comes to that, takes time. As far as understanding when to do stretches and when to do foam rolling. Foam rolling is, hey, I'm having some joint pain. It's not pinching. It's more of like a pulling. That's probably the muscles are gunked up, and we need to foam roll them. And so P. Riley had the sciatic nerve pain. With sciatica, it's usually your sciatic nerve runs through your piriformis. Your piriformis is tight. It's gunked up. We need to get it to relax again. So we did a lot of foam rolling. Hers was her hamstrings were tight, and it was causing that pull. So if you're getting a pulling, it's usually tight muscles. We need to foam roll it. If you're getting a pinching when you create a shape, I go to raise my arm overhead, it just doesn't feel right. That's what you had, right? Yeah, you had some shoulder impingement. How are you doing now?
I'm getting there. That's something I mentioned to you in the goal assessment that I have to continue to work on.
Yeah, so banded distractions, that kind of stuff. That's how I fix mine. So if we're getting pinching, that's what happens, with your hips. We do a lot of banded stuff. Even the banded distraction we did yesterday takes a little bit longer to set up, which is why we won't see it in group classes. But do you notice the difference in your hips and your knees afterwards?
Oh, yeah, big time.
And so that's how I choose whether or not I'm doing a banded distraction or I'm doing the foam rolling. I like to do, if someone comes to me with pain, I like to hit it all, and then I pick 3 of them for them to work on. And so what are the 3 best ones? That's a good question. Yes, Torian?
If you talk about the IT band a little bit,
As far as,
just the benefits, because the IT band's always been something that's talked about to me throughout sports, especially in recovery, but I've never gotten, why is it so important?
specifically, what are you trying to
Why
ask?
is it so important to
What?
stretch?
To stretch, to kind of foam roll out, what is it?
Yeah, so
The significance of it. Yeah.
first, do you know what your IT band is?
No. How about that?
Okay, so your IT, yeah, all right. So your IT band is this giant piece of connective tissue that runs down the side of your leg. So your glutes tie into it, all this stuff ties into it, and then it comes down here. So when I squeeze my butt and I rotate, these muscles are pulling on that connective tissue, that IT band, to rotate it. It's a giant piece of connective tissue. We use it a lot for rotation. So anytime you're squatting, you're deadlifting, you're jumping, you're lunging, you rotate every time you take a step. These muscles are firing to keep that femur in place. We don't foam roll that quite a bit, right? We do a lot of front of the body, a lot of the back of the body, but we need to make sure this tissue can be free and relaxed. So that's why you would want to foam roll that probably more often than you are. And honestly, because we use it so much, again, your IT band, it's connective tissue, guys. It's white tissue. It's not actually a muscle. But you have muscles tying into it that are pulling on it. We use it so much for jumping. I mean, almost everything you do as far as lower body, you're using that IT band. It's part of the connective tissue. That's why it's so sensitive every time we roll it, because we're using it almost on a daily basis. Even when we do like push press, when you dip and you go to drive, you're squeezing your butt, that's pulling on that connective tissue. So that's a good question. Same thing with your forearms too. You grip every single day that you're in here. Anytime you pick up an object, you're gripping. You probably use your fingers more than anything. And so it's really important to make sure, you had the wrist injury, just doing some circles throughout the day. Scrubbing this tissue, that stuff's important. That's a good question. Any other questions? Matt?
I don't know if this really goes into this lecture,
Yeah.
but taking care of your hands.
Oh, as far as like rips and tears?
Yep.
So, I can answer that question. Rips and tears are caused by friction forces on the skin. And so really that's just a fancy way of saying your grip is not strong enough, your hand is rotating on the bar and it's causing the tearing in the hands. There's a couple ways to minimize that. One is improve your grip to where your hands don't rotate on the bar. 2, combine that with wearing grips. The grips are made to protect your hands. That's why I wear them. As far as how to take care of them, shave down your calluses. The calluses are there to protect you, but you don't want them build up too much because they will tear. Like that's what happened to me the other day with the hand cleans. When you're in the shower, take a pumice stone. If you do tear them, trim the area and use Aquaphor. Aquaphor has been the best. Usually I put that on overnight and then my hand is good enough for the next day.
So the CrossFit community thanks you.
Yeah. So, any other questions? No? As you guys probably know, this is the stuff I like really geek out on. I really love knowing what's going on with the body. That's how I coach you guys. It's all on how, which muscles are firing to create certain shapes. I really think that's what sets me apart as a coach. But yeah, who all learned something today? Cool.
I feel like we're all impractical jokers.
Yeah.
Waiting for Ashton Kutcher to
All right.
pop out.
Are there any comments on there or anything?
Nope. Mike said sorry I'm late, but he's joining. He's watching. So
Oh,
bye,
okay.
Mike.
Mike, you can always go back and watch it. It'll be on the Facebook page. So, guys, I appreciate you coming. We're trying to do these talks every month. This is something I'm really passionate about as far as like providing you guys with a pain-free life. So, if there are no other questions, you guys are free to go.
Here's my way by.